Welcome to the region's only public safety talk show. It's time again for the Sheriff's Report, your weekly report from Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. Sheriff's Report covers a variety of public issues in Spokane County and is now in its fourth year on the air. Sheriff's Report is sponsored by River Ridge Hardware. Now, here's your host, Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you're listening to this. Today we're going to have a discussion about a documentary that was put on by KOMO News in Seattle. And I think that this documentary is salient at this point because even though Spokane is not in the position that Seattle is, there are very definite parallels that we're facing. And if we don't change that direction, we could end up here. And in some instances, we are very much far down the road in reference to this documentary.
Ozzie, I think you're making a good point. I think KOMO did a great job on this documentary. Is Seattle dying? Obviously, the title of this particular segment is Spokane dying? Well, of course not. But this is a good wake-up call for any major city because we're all grappling with these same issues. But whether it be the Sheriff's Department, GSI, Visit Spokane, Downtown Spokane Partnership, everybody's doing a great job in Spokane to try to avoid some of these issues. But let's kind of drill down on what some of these critical issues for a large major city are.
Let's do that. And we're going to play clip 1 and 2. We'll play clip 1 and then we'll kind of lead right into clip 2. I think it's important. Folks, this is going to be kind of a fast-paced program because we have a few clips to go through and an opportunity to chat about them. So here we go with the start, clip 1.
Let me ask you something. What if Seattle is dying and we don't even know it? This story is about a seething, simmering anger that is now boiling over into outrage. It is about people who have felt compassion, yes, but who no longer feel safe, no longer feel like they are heard, no longer feel protected. It is about lost souls who wander our streets, untethered to home or family or reality, chasing a drug which in turn chases them. It is about the damage they inflict on themselves, to be sure, but also on the fabric of this place where we live. This story is about a beautiful jewel that has been violated and a crisis of faith amongst a generation of Seattleites falling out of love with their home. There is another part of this story, too. It's about a solution, an idea.
Now,
some of that's hard to watch.
It is, and we're going to get into that solution. That solution, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, is something that I've talked about for almost 13 years now. We have a way to prevent some of this from happening, but we have to have the political will to do it.
Right. And
as you noted, the business community in Spokane has done a great job revitalizing the downtown area. Has done a great job trying to bring Spokane forward, and I liken Spokane to a diamond in the rough. And the day that we finally figure out that direction that we're heading towards, I don't think there's anything stopping this community except for our own mistakes if we can go down this particular path. This isn't a path that we can really afford to go down.
Well, as you said with the business community, there's certainly a vested interest in not only doing the right thing for the right reasons for the individuals in our community in need, but also from a business standpoint, having an environment that business can thrive.
Exactly. And if you listen very closely to the citizens of this community, they're concerned right now. They feel a dynamic changing. And I've talked to business people in the downtown core, and they're starting to get a little frustrated. And I think it's time that the electeds within the city council really take a hard look at the direction that we're heading. And part of that discussion leads into clip 2. This is a business owner and some of the challenges that he faced because of this dynamic that we have going on in Seattle.
Right.
So let's play clip 2.
There were fires set outside his shop this past summer, and Mr. Derek Shande does not blame police. He believes their power has been stripped away.
The city mayor doesn't give the cops authority. That's the problem. We need somebody with some weights and tell them, it's not legal living on the sidewalk. It's city ordinance. It's not legal living here. Why can't we enforce the law?
So if you take a look at that frustration, it is very similar to some of the discussions I've had with people from the downtown core and people in the downtown core. So I think that if we take the time to listen to that dynamic, rather than, as some of our electeds on the council tend to drown that out for some reason.
What do you think some of that impetus is? Because I think, Ozzie, you make a great point that this really is, I don't want to use the word battle per se, but it really is a push and pull between what does the community need, what does the community want, critical issues with some of our citizens here, and then, as you said, our electeds. What avenue do we have to try to bridge that gap and have resolution?
I think that bridging happens when you listen to all the alternatives. Right now, we seem to be stuck in, and if you listen to the entire documentary, the narrator says time and time again, compassion. We have to show compassion, which we do, absolutely. But you can't have a misguided compassion. There's nothing compassionate about locking somebody into a lifestyle that ultimately kills them.
And they can't get out of.
And they can't get out of. The opioid addiction in the state of Washington, it's the #1 killer of people in the state now. The #1 killer. So you tell me where this compassion that everybody talks about, especially at the city hall level, at the council level, of we have to be very compassionate, we have to give, where is this compassion when you're actually locking people into a lifestyle that leads to death?
And is just potentially, I think as the narrator indicates on several occasions, just circular. Because if you have predominantly high percentages of mental illness and addiction, as you're indicating, that compassion to just allow it doesn't lead us potentially to get out of that circular problem. That maybe the compassion, I think as the narrator indicates on several occasions, is to how do you break that chain? That would be the compassion, so that as many of the individuals in the documentary say, they'd be dead otherwise.
And I've heard that from more and more of the people out on the street. We have programs that we've developed. We have a apprenticeship program that AGC has partnered with Judith Gilmore, and that apprenticeship gives people a path into the construction trades. Now, we've run 3 of these classes out of Geiger Corrections. And our success rate has been very, very high.
The AGC does that?
Yes.
That's interesting.
So that's, you have the business world actually having an impact in changing people's lives. And when you listen to the people that go through that program, after 6 months, after a year, they're like, my life is changed.
The appreciation is palpable.
They're no longer on the streets. They're no longer abusing drugs. They are healthy, productive, and they have a future. The other side of this is, well, we'll just give them, places for safe needle exchange. We'll, give them this, give them that, but there's no way out for them.
In a sense, it's placating them or the issue rather than maybe providing a resolution. And I don't claim to be an expert, but I have listened to several experts in the categories of drug addiction and mental illness, and it appears that Spokane, again, is doing a great job in providing many of these resources. If potentially some of our, as you said, elected officials will continue to bridge that gap of moving towards a solution rather than, I think the word I used, placating or allowing it just to continue.
Exactly.
Wrong definition of compassion.
Exactly. Like I said, there's nothing compassionate about locking somebody into this type of lifestyle. And you have to have incentive to get out. And the crime rates are something that I think we need to really take a hard look at. In the next clip, they're going to talk about the property crime rates. Now you're going to see New York on one side of the spectrum, and you're going to see Seattle, San Francisco on the other. And San Francisco is suffering from the same problems that Seattle is right now. And once we listen to that, I'll give you what the true dynamic is between New York and the top two. So why don't we take a look at this clip number 3.
Let's look for a moment at property crimes for the 20 biggest cities in the country. New York City in 2017 had 1,448 property crimes per 100,000 residents. Los Angeles was just over 2,500, Chicago 3,263, and look at Seattle, 5,258. The only major city with a worse number is San Francisco, which is dealing with the same problems for the same reasons that we are. They top the 6,000 mark. It's not your imagination. The crime here, the burglaries, the theft, the stealing of cars is worse than in other big cities, and in most cases, it's way worse. And then you walk down the street and you see a wretched soul like this, consumed by demons, maybe madness, maybe drugs, maybe both.
So when you take a look at that clip, people go, wait a minute, New York, San Francisco, what is that dynamic?
Right, 2 poles, if you will.
New York learned one thing during the time that it went from being one of the highest crime rated cities in the nation in the 90s to where they are now. You have to take care of the quality of life crimes. You have to take care of those low level crimes. If you don't, you feed into that and you gain more and more crime, and eventually your major crimes start coming up.
Well, I think they made a major point of that in the Seattle is Dying clips, where they talked about the top 100 list, if you will, of the individuals that just circled through the system on these lower level crimes. But then once they were in the system, it never changed. It never changed until they stopped even giving citations.
Exactly. And how do we get there? Well, we get there because we have a broken criminal justice system, quite frankly, at the state level. At the part of that, it led into some mental health and drug addiction issues. At the state level, we're basically abandoning the mental health issue and pushing that right straight down to the local level.
I would agree with that.
Local government is not geared for this.
Right.
We are not geared for it. We're not funded for it. And there are people that need that heavy supervision that comes with being in an institution to help manage that mental health issue. The term is called least restrictive alternative. And if you take a look at the mindset behind least restrictive alternative, it is deinstitutionalize all these people, put them in group homes. Well, here's the problem. When they fell at the group home, there's no other place for them. And they end up on the street.
And we are seeing that in Spokane.
Yes,
Again, I could go on and on about the positivity and glass half full. Spokane is a gem, diamond in the rough. But I would agree with you, Ozzie. There are scenarios where these individuals, there is no place for them to go. The mental health systems don't have most likely the capacity or resources, so they end up on the street. And I do think we're starting to see a pretty significant issue there.
And this is something that's happened to us at the state level. The state has forced this problem down onto the locals. And it's something that I think the local level governments need to start pushing back on and asking the state, if you're going to do this, you need to make sure that there's proper infrastructure. Because if they fell at the group home level, then you need to have some kind of intermediate stop point between institution and group home, so we can bring them back up, get them stabilized, and hopefully bring them back down into a group home. But there are some people that they cannot handle that lack of structure in their lives. So if you take a look at the crime level, how do we get to a point where this next clip can happen? Well, we're going to run clip 4, and then we're going to run the 2 following, because the next 2 are from the law enforcement perspective. And once we get done with the next 3 clips, I'll talk a little bit about what you're actually seeing and what we're seeing here
I find that
locally.
very interesting because Ozzie obviously is a sheriff in Spokane County, and your deputies and City of Spokane, City of the Valley, the boots on the ground of what you're actually seeing can't be denied. It's what you are actually seeing. And I think the KOMO clips did a great job of throwing out the survey and saying, well, where are the positive responses? And the narrator says there weren't any.
There weren't any.
And I'd be curious, and we'll talk about it after this clip, if that same survey was done by your own deputies, boots on the ground, what would the results be? But let's take a look at the clip.
So we're going to run clip 3, 4, 4, 5, and 6 back to back. So let's start with clip 4.
That is Travis Berge stretching out before we interviewed him. He came from Reno 4 years ago. He's a musician, a big personality, and he has problems.
You're a user, right? What's your drug of choice?
I use methamphetamines.
Yeah.
And I try to at least use it once a day. But I don't really consider myself a drug abuser. The shit is amazing.
You like the meth?
I love it.
Remember that list of familiar faces? Travis is on it. 34 criminal cases in 4 years. Things like assault, attempted rape, trespassing.
You're on a list, you know.
Nice.
There's a list of the 100. They came out with the 100 frequent flyers,
Really?
friendly faces.
Of everything?
Of all, the entire.
Which one am I?
Which number on the list?
Yeah.
Oh, you're up there.
Nice.
You're up there.
I was just saying, like, I've definitely been the most in Seattle. Guaranteed.
Travis, put the bike down, Travis!
This is body cam footage of an incident on First and Pike a little more than a year ago.
Travis! What's up? Travis? What's up? Hey, come on, Travis. Travis! Hey, you Travis, put the bike down.
It started with property destruction and escalated into assaulting police officers. A bunch of cops were deployed.
Stand up so we can get out of here.
Berge spit on them,
Don't spit.
fought them.
Hey, no biting. Don't bite yourself either.
Stand up, Travis. We're going to the gurney. Here's the gurney.
It lasted hours.
Forward.
Well, I'm actually not even high right now.
Travis is outrageously unapologetic about his life and his world. He could care less about yours.
Do you steal for your habit?
I actually just started stealing last Monday. I started stealing, and oh my God, dude. That was one of the hardest sacrifices, is to like do unrighteous things in front of my dudes.
Travis, just relax. Travis, do you want to smoke? Travis, you want to smoke or a candy bar?
But
Will you continue to do that?
oh, I'm having a blast now. It is so much fun.
What should the system do with a guy like you?
I think that this system has done what any viable, legitimate system would, and they've really like exalted me and like shown deference and love towards me.
Back the I want to see you pick it up with your mouth, though. Remember when you caught it with your toes?
And like, I don't feel like I'll ever be arrested again. I haven't been in jail for like a year and 3 months or so, you know? So a change like that, responding to big change, definitely shows that I have conquered the criminal justice system.
Want to know the sad part, the truly frustrating part? He's probably right.
Well, if you are wondering how anybody can come to the conclusion that they've conquered the criminal justice system, let's see what the police officers in clips 5 and 6 have to say. So let's play clip 5 and 6.
In a misguided attempt to help this population, the city has allowed the streets to be essentially taken over. The city is falling apart and becoming more unsafe due to politics surrounding low-level criminal activity and homelessness. We don't want to screw over the homeless population. We just want the ability to police them. And yet another officer told us this: drug dealers selling crack, meth, and heroin are evil people preying on the weakest part of society and belong in prison. We arrest them and nothing happens to them. They are back out on the street immediately. We need to acknowledge the disregard for human life inherent in selling life-ending drugs and lock the dealers up for serious time. One of the officers who replied to the questionnaire we sent out agreed. The amount of money lost due to thefts downtown, he said, is staggering. Unfortunately, the businesses take the hit, and the person caught stealing rarely has to deal with any consequences. Denise Moriguchi is the CEO of Ozzie, the grocery shopping hub of the International District.
The system's broken, and I think that's creating the boldness.
Ozzie called 911 at least 599 times over a 19-month stretch.
They're bold when they get caught. They kind of just, they don't really care, and they oftentimes we'll put in a police report and they'll get a trespassing notification, but then they'll just walk right back in, and it's kind of like, oh, well, you have this trespassing. Okay, what are you gonna do? Call the police?
And if you're wondering why that boldness she talks about exists, of those 599 reports of shoplifting at her store in a 19-month stretch, about 8 of the cases ended in some form of prosecution, most of those because they also involved assault.
It's huge, and it costs these businesses, small mom and pop businesses and large retailers alike, it costs them millions and millions of dollars per year. And you know what? The businesses don't like to talk about it themselves because nobody wants to say how much they're losing, but we know it is millions of dollars.
Citizens and shop owners had waited for the people running our city to come up with something, a plan. And then one day last May, a group of construction workers got tired of waiting and took action.
Coming here for this important discussion.
No head tax! No head tax! No head tax!
As you know, I'm also a rank and file member of the labor movement.
No head tax! No head tax! No head tax!
On that day, the tide turned against Seattle's proposed business head tax to pay for homeless services and affordable housing.
But if we fight against each other, the bosses win.
No head tax! No head tax!
The city council, which had passed the tax unanimously.
All right. Pretty stark reality.
Yeah.
The problem is property crimes in the state of Washington are the way they are because of our elected officials. I've had discussions with elected officials that went like this. Well, all those vehicle thefts, well, those are people that own Cadillacs and Escalades, and they can afford that. And my response back was, Senator, you're out of touch.
Right, lack of accountability.
Because it's the single mother who is working very hard that is having her Honda 1990s usually stolen.
Yeah.
And they are out of touch. And if you ask why the philosophy, what the difference in philosophies are, that last part about the head tax, you have a fight in the United States going on right now versus capitalism and socialism. Socialism is what you saw right there. And quite frankly, this is why socialism fails continually. It locks people into the lowest tiers. And I think we need to realize that and think about the direction we're going. But there is a solution to this.
Right.
Many years ago, I was asked, how do you break this cycle?
And I love to hear the positivity of, with a systematic change, can we make demonstrative change? And
yes,
I think that's what you're speaking to.
We can. I said that the next prison that's built in the state of Washington needs to be a long-term treatment facility because 30, 60, 90-day drug treatments don't work. They just don't. It's been proven. It takes 18 months to 24 months to change somebody's life, especially when they're hooked on
heroin, methamphetamines,
those type of drugs. And if you simply would hold them accountable for the crimes that they're committing because of their drug habit, send them to a place where we deal with their drug issues, deal with the co-occurring mental health issues, give them a job skill, and teach them how to go out and get a job, you will change their dynamic in their life forever.
Right. Give them the capability to be a productive individual
Exactly.
without the substance abuse, and hopefully reining in the mental illness issue or providing resources to treat it.
Exactly. So, is it working somewhere else? Most definitely. Let's take a look at clip 7.
Is this the Rhode Island
MAT program,
Yeah.
medication-assisted treatment.
We can't just ignore our way out of this. We can't arrest our way out of this. People are dying, and there's something we can do to stop that.
It starts out here, really, because the first thing that they do in Rhode Island is enforce their laws. Drug dealers and the people who steal and commit crime to get their drugs eventually end up in this place, the Rhode Island Department of Corrections. It's not a nice place. It's a prison. But inside the walls, something amazing happens. Every day, the inmates who are in the MAT program line up and they take their medicine. There are 3 opiate blockers that work: methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol. They are FDA approved. They get people off heroin. They save lives. Prisoners who enter the program choose which medicine they want to use.
That's how you end this dilemma. You give people hope. You give them a chance and a way out. Right now, we're not. We're not even having these discussions. You know, you have people in this community talk about smart justice.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand smart justice.
Yeah, that's an interesting phrase.
They've never understood smart justice. Mark Richard and I, when he was county commissioner, went to Florida, and we brought smart justice to this community. Here's the crux of smart justice: accountability. If we give you all these programs and we help you with your problem, if you choose to go back to your other lifestyle, you're held accountable immediately. Right. Swift and certain accountability. The next aspect is, in order for that to work, you have to have an empty jail bed. Spokane County has none of that. We have neither the accountability or the empty jail bed to make this work. If we're really serious about not ending up here, then we need to fix that dynamic. And folks, we're running out of time. I'm getting a hard break here. In the next few weeks, I'm going to come back. We'll talk a little bit more about these solutions and try to get people to understand that we don't have to go here.
Right.
We can move in a different direction and actually save people's lives rather than handing them the means to self-destruction.
Please appreciate you leading the charge and those around you. Appreciate your work on this.
Thank you very much. This is the Sheriff's Report. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching. Sheriff's Report is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksMedia.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Sheriff's Report is sponsored by River Ridge Hardware. Ask Ozzie a question, recommend a guest, or hear this program again on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com.